to make the human being acquainted with the infinite reality which resides inside every person. So this is a vidya, and the real English word we can use to understand what vidya means is science. It is the science of the self. So Upanishads are not literally speaking books, but it is the science of self-realization. If you look into the human life, you see that human life is fraught with so many challenges. We have sufferings all around us. And there is always a search, a quest going on inside the minds of the human beings as to where lies the solution to this suffering that we all face in life. So the main concern of the Upanishad is to put an end to this suffering and delusion. There are two terms used in Vedanta. Shoka and Moha. So the main concern of the Upanishad is Shoka Moha Nivritti. It means to put an end to the sufferings which we have in our life and to put an end to the delusion which we all suffer from. Shoka Moha Nivritti, to put an end to the sufferings and miseries of life and to put an end to the delusion that we suffer from. And this can happen only when we realize the infinite reality which is inside each one of us. That is the only way. So the concern of all the Upanishad is to impart this knowledge of the self and nothing else. And when we talk about Katha Upanishad also deals with this very issue in its very beautiful and unique way. But there is one speciality about Katha Upanishad. And the speciality of Katha Upanishad is that in this Upanishad we come across a very inspiring character named as Nachiketa. And I want all of you to know that, perhaps many of you may be knowing, that Katha Upanishad was very dear to Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda used to say that everybody should read Katha Upanishad. And one of the main reasons why Swami Vivekananda, as I understand, insisted upon the studying of Katha Upanishad, the reason is this beautiful character of Nachiketa, which stands like a model before all of us. There's a lot to learn from this character. It's a short story, but a story with eternal relevance, even to our own modern times, and especially in these difficult times in which we are living today. So let me just narrate this story of Nachiketa in very short. Many of you might have read Katha Upanishad and you may be well aware about this story, but there is no problem. We can always visit and revisit these Upanishads. We have to visit and revisit them. Upanishads are not something that you read it once and you close it. It's not like that. We need to constantly keep our mind engaged in this pursuit, the pursuit of self-knowledge. And as long as we don't reach the goal, this pursuit, this striving has to go on uninterrupted as much as possible. So in that sense, even if you have read Katha Upanishad, and even if you are aware with the story of Nachiketa, it's good to once again re-look at this wonderful personality of Nachiketa and what we can learn from him. So, Nachiketa is a boy of around, say, 8 or 10 years old, and he was a brilliant boy, and his father was conducting a sacrifice. Now, this is a sacrifice which we have to understand from the ancient Vedic times. The Vedic times in India, it was very common to have such sacrifices done, performed, and there are different kinds of sacrifices with different purposes, even worldly purposes. So Nachiketa's father was conducting one such sacrifice, and this sacrifice demanded the performer to give away everything that he has with him. Anyone who performs this sacrifice is supposed to give away everything in charity to the Brahmins or those who deserve to be given something in charity. So Nachiketa's father was giving away many things to these people, those who had assembled there. And Nachiketa was closely observing his father. And what did he observe? He saw that his father is giving away cows which are old and which are of no more use to anybody. In short, useless cows. The cows which are almost, whose lifespan has almost come to an end and who are now not of any use to anybody. They don't calve anymore, they don't give milk, they cannot be used for farming. Such useless cows, Nachiketa's father was giving away to the people. Now this was completely contrary to the spirit of this sacrifice. Because in this sacrifice, the performer of the sacrifice is supposed to give away the best things to others. Whereas Nachiketa's father was keeping the best things for himself and giving away the worthless stuff to others. And now when Nachiketa saw this, a wonderful thing happened to him. This is something which is very interesting and which needs to be noted here. The Upanishad says, it's a beautiful Sanskrit term there, Upanishad says, in that situation when Nachiketa was seeing his father was giving away cows which were absolutely useless, Shraddha Avivesha. In Sanskrit, the word is Shraddha Avivesha. Shraddha entered into this body. Now, this is something wonderful, this one term, Shraddha. Now, what happens when the Shraddha enters into anybody for that matter? The Shraddha is a very important thing in human life. When life comes to the human stage, it is the Shraddha which actually makes a big difference. The difference between two human beings is actually speaking the difference in the degree of Shraddha which that person has. A person with tremendous Shraddha, you can see his life begins to move in a certain direction without any interruption, and it straight away goes to the main goal. Whereas the life or a human being who doesn't have the Shraddha, his life goes in the opposite direction. So Shraddha is a very important ingredient, a component which should be present in the human being and which makes a huge difference. So what happened when this Shraddha entered into Nachiketa? Immediately this boy goes and questions his father. Oh father, you were supposed to give away the best things to others, whereas you are giving away these useless cows. He could see the deception in his father's act. Something was wrong actually. What his father was not doing the right thing. There was an element of deception, an element of untruthfulness in what Nachiketa's father was doing, and that was going to bring negative results to Nachiketa's father. It was going to, literally speaking, harm Nachiketa's father. And in order to see that his father is not harmed by his act, he wanted to go and correct his father, and he goes and asks, "Oh Father, you are giving away these things to these people. Please tell me, whom are you going to give me to?" Why Nachiketa is saying this? Actually speaking, in this sacrifice, one is supposed to give away the best things to others. And for the father, the son is the most important person or a thing which is present in his life. So Nachiketa comes and asks this question to his father, "Oh Father, whom are you going to give away me to? You are supposed to give away everything that you have, so you are supposed to give me also. Please tell me, whom are you going to give me to?" So initially, this is just a young boy, 8 or 10 years old boy. So no grown-up person, a father, doesn't pay much attention to what a small boy speaks. So initially, Nachiketa's father didn't pay much attention. But Nachiketa was again and again pressing and again asking this question, "Father, please tell me, whom are you going to give me to?" And ultimately, frustrated and in an anger, Nachiketa's father said, "Go, I will give you away to death." Often it so happens that in the spur of the moment, in an angry mood, we sometimes blurt out certain things, not exactly meaning it, but it comes out. This is what precisely happened with Nachiketa's father. He blurted out in anger that, "Go away, I give you away to death." So as these words came out from his mouth, now Nachiketa said, "Father, you have told that you are giving me away to death." Death means the Lord of Death. And he is actually usually known as Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. Usually we have all kinds of ideas about the Lord of Death. We think that he is a very, very devilish kind of a person. And perhaps in Western imagination, when we talk about death and the Lord of the Death, we have this kind of an imagination that he may be a very evil kind of a person, very negative character. But it's not like that. Actually, this Lord of Death, Yamaraj, is a great person. He's a wonderful man, a great tapasvi. It is out of his great meritorious deeds that he has attained to that great position of being the Lord of Death. So Yamaraj is a great person. He's a great, very austere, and is a man of a great wisdom. And here in Katha Upanishad, Yamaraj is the teacher. He is the guru. He is the one who is going to impart the science of self-knowledge to Nachiketa. So that's the interesting aspect of this story. So when Nachiketa's father said that, "I give you away to death," so Nachiketa immediately says, "Okay, then you have to send me to death. I'm going to the abode of death." So of course that was very shocking for Nachiketa's father. And Nachiketa's father tried to stop him from going, as any father would do. But Nachiketa was a person who very strongly adhered to the principle of truthfulness. He didn't want his father's words to become falsified. What his father had uttered, to see that it doesn't become falsified, he remains firm on his determination to go to the abode of death. And that is how we find Nachiketa going to the abode of death. And there, the story goes that when Nachiketa reaches there, Yamaraj is not there in his house, and Nachiketa had to wait for 3 days before Yamaraj came back. And as Yamaraj comes back, Yamaraj feels that as Nachiketa had stayed there for 3 days without eating anything, so it was proper for him to compensate this with 3 boons. And in this way we find that Yamaraj offers Nachiketa 3 boons. You ask for 3 boons. And then the story goes that Nachiketa asks very 3 important boons. The first boon that he asks for is the boon of, it's so interesting, Nachiketa says that, you see, in our everyday life, let us try to understand in our human context, if we have caused pain to somebody, in our everyday life, we all know that often it so happens that in our dealings with others, knowingly or unknowingly, we cause pain to the other person. And if at all we have caused pain to the other person, if we have hurt somebody, without first redressing that, we actually speaking cannot go ahead in life peacefully. When we hurt somebody, we are actually hurting our own self. So Nachiketa had actually heard the sentiments of his father when his father said that please don't go to the abode of death. But Nachiketa was determined that he will go to the abode of death in order to see that, ensure that Nachiketa's father's words are not falsified. So ultimately it was something which caused pain to his father. So the first boon that he asked for was, let my father, who is gripped with anxiety and worries about me, and who was hurt and who was pain, let my father be first peaceful. That is the first boon that he asks for. This is a lesson for us to learn that in our day-to-day life, we should understand whenever we cause pain to somebody, or whenever we hurt somebody, our first and foremost job is to first go and redress that before we go and do something else. Unless we do that, we won't be able to carry on life peacefully. So Nachiketa first does this great thing. The first boon that he uses is to redress this pain that he had caused his father. Then the second boon he asks for is that he sees that this world is full of suffering, and in our day-to-day life, everybody wants to be happy, everybody wants to enjoy good things of life. This is the natural tendency of every living being. Everybody wants to have pleasant experiences. This is instinctive in every living being, that we all want to have pleasant experiences and we don't want to have pain. So seeing this, Nachiketa asks from Yama that special sacrifice which, when performed, will help the performer to attain a heavenly region by which the people can go to heaven and have a more happy and pleasant life. So the second boon Nachiketa uses for the sake of understanding that sacrifice by which everybody in this world will be able to attain to heavenly pleasures and happiness. See, in this first 2 boons, what we really actually have to pay attention to is that Nachiketa didn't ask anything for himself. That is very important. The question comes, if God comes and today stands in front of us and God says, my dear child, I am giving you 3 boons, what will be our immediate response to that? Are we going to ask something for ourselves, or are we going to ask something for the good of others? In Nachiketa, we found that both the first 2 boons which he asked was not meant for himself. The first boon he used for the good of his father, and the second boon he asked was for the good of everybody. In the world, everybody wants to have good experiences, so he was finding the way out by which every common person, the common man and the common woman will be able to go and have these heavenly pleasures and experiences. Now comes the third boon, and this is very important. In this third boon, we find that Nachiketa he keeps the best for the last. The best thing to be asked, he keeps in the last. And through this last boon, Nachiketa raises a very vital issue which is eternally relevant for the entire human race. Nachiketa asks a question. In Sanskrit, it's so beautiful. It says, Yeyam prete vichikitsa manushye astitye nayanastiti cheti. When a human being dies, some people say that he is completely gone. And some people say, no, something is left behind. Nachiketa asks this question to Yamaraj, that please tell me, what is this mystery of death? Does anything survive the death of the human body? Is there anything behind the human body? This is the main question, a vital question which has been and which is and which for all times to come will trouble the human mind as long as we don't find an answer to it. So, when Nachiketa put this question before Yamaraj was totally shocked. Such a profound question coming from a small boy of 8 or 10 years old, can you imagine? Such a question doesn't come even in the minds of very elderly people, because we are busy with the so-called the humdrum things of life. But this small boy, just 8 or 10 years old, to be interested in such a profound issue, it is something unthinkable. Usually it doesn't happen like that way. So Yamaraj was totally surprised to find this small boy raising this profound question, and he wanted to ensure whether this was something like a superficial curiosity, or whether this question was really coming from a serious spirit of investigation. He wanted to ensure this. And in order to do that, he started tempting Nachiketa with all kinds of things to deviate him from this main question of the mystery of life and death. So Yamaraj started telling him, you see, my dear boy, you ask for anything else. There are so many good things up in this world. Why are you bothering your head with this question? You see, I can give you all pleasurable things of this world. I can make you the lord of this earth. You take cattle, you take horses, you take elephants, you take gold. You take the lordship of this entire planet. I will give you all the pleasures. Ye kama durlabha martyaloke. I will give you all those pleasures which are durlabham, which is very difficult to be got in this earthly plane. Even the human beings living on this earthly plane, they cannot even imagine such pleasures I offer to you. Take them, but do not ask this question about life and death. Yamaraj was trying his best to deviate this boy from the main track. He says that I will give you the damsels of the heaven, the most beautiful damsels, and all the pleasures, you take them and you enjoy life. Why are you bothering about this question of life and death? So in spite of all these temptations, we find in Nachiketa a person with unbending resolve and determination, a fantastic characteristic which actually speaks volumes about what actually this boy wants to convey to the entire humanity. Today, this is one thing which we have to learn from this character. So Nachiketa says to Yama that, you see, you are offering all these things to me, but I am not interested in all these things. You keep these things for yourself. The Sanskrit word is very beautiful. Tavaiva vaha tavanritya gite. All these damsels and chariots and cattle and elephants and gold and lordship of this earth, all these things you keep for yourself. Tell me about that mystery of life and death. I am interested in that and that alone. Now, so much for the story, and then from there, Yamaraj is totally deeply impressed with what Nachiketa actually displayed there. A wonderful characteristic, a characteristic of being truly human. What really makes us truly human is this pursuit of the Supreme Truth. If this pursuit of the Supreme Truth doesn't come into human life, truly speaking, we are not different from the so-called the animal kingdom. Because whatever the animals do, we too do that. But essentially the human life is meant for something more than that. If that more element, the true factor which actually makes us human being, and that is this one, the pursuit of the ultimate truth, if that doesn't come into the human life, we don't really become human in a very technical sense. That is why Adi Shankaracharya, in his Katha, in his Vivekachudamani, he makes a beautiful remark there. Three things are extremely rare in this creation. Three things are extremely rare in this creation. Durlabham Trayamaivaita Daivanugraha Haitukam. Three things are extremely rare. And if at all somebody has got these three things, we should understand that that is only owing to the infinite grace of God. What are these three things? Shankaracharya says, number one, birth in the human body. Number two, desire to attain spiritual liberation. And number three is the blessings of a Sadguru, the guidance of a Sadguru. If these three things are present in a human life, one should understand that this happens only owing to the infinite grace of Almighty Lord. So this is what actually makes human life meaningful. Now, let me just focus upon certain very important traits that we find in Nachiketa's character, which was very dear to Swami Vivekananda. What are these characteristics which we find in Nachiketa's personality? The first and foremost thing is Shraddha, which I referred to you before, and I would like to just spend a few minutes on this subject of Shraddha because it is very important in the present situation as well. Why Shraddha is so important? What is Shraddha? We need to understand that Shraddha doesn't mean, usually the English word which is used to understand the term Shraddha is faith. But this faith, this term, is very insufficient to understand what Shraddha conveys. Yes, there is an element of faith, the English word faith, but that is not the whole thing of what Shraddha actually conveys. Shraddha means faith not in any creed or dogma. This we should understand. Again, repeat. Shraddha doesn't mean faith in any creed or any dogma. No. Shraddha means faith in one's own self. Now, what do we mean by Shraddha as faith in one's own self? Shraddha means faith in the existence of an infinite reality within each one of us. Again, I repeat, Shraddha means the faith in the existence of an infinite, all-powerful reality within each one of us. Shraddha means the faith in the power of truth, goodness, and righteousness. Shraddha means the ultimate faith in the ultimate meaningfulness of life itself. Life is full of meaning. Every single happening, every single event which is happening in life, it is filled with meaning. And Shraddha means to have that faith in the ultimate meaningfulness of human life itself. Life is extremely meaningful, it is purposeful. And that purpose comes from the existence of an ultimate reality and that faith in that ultimate reality. That is Shraddha. So, ultimately, if you just see, Shraddha is, you can say that it is the totality of positive attitudes. Totality of positive attitudes which is inclined towards an ultimate reality. It is a frame of mind which affirms, again I repeat, it is a frame of mind, a frame of human mind which affirms the existence of an infinite reality within each one of us. It is affirmative of what is existing inside each one of us. And this affirmation doesn't stop there. Once you affirm, your mind begins to affirm positively that there exists an infinite reality within each one of us. The next step is that human being will begin to move towards the experience of that infinite reality. So this is not something static faith. It is that faith which is dynamic, faith in the existence of an infinite reality inside us, and that faith makes us move towards the experience of that infinite reality. Now, let us try to understand this in a slightly different way. The opposite of this. What happens when we don't have Shraddha? The absence of Shraddha expresses itself in human life in the form of the most dangerous disease of cynicism and skepticism. Presently, my dear devotees, I would like to specially mention one point. Today, of course, we all know this entire world is gripped by a sense of insecurity, a sense of fear by seeing death all around us. We all know this. The entire human race is facing a big challenge, something very unique in the human history. And in this situation, we can see that this cynicism, this skepticism, this absence of Shraddha is what is actually causing a sense of insecurity in us. Just imagine if a person is filled with Shraddha, if a person is endowed with the Shraddha, as I said, what does it mean? It means the positive state of mind which affirms the existence of an infinite reality within each one of us. If we have this quality in this situation as well, today as we see death around us, we won't be gripped by a sense of fear and insecurity. Today, half of the humanity is under lockdown. We know that. Half of the humanity is indoors. And everybody has got a sense of fear about what is going to happen in the future. In this situation, if you have Shraddha, if the person has got Shraddha within himself or herself, the person will be successful in negotiating this difficult situation. By affirming there is something within each one of us which is beyond death, which is there, which doesn't get destroyed. So this Shraddha is something very important. In the absence of this Shraddha, the human being tends to become a bundle of complaints and grievances. We constantly complain of life. The human being tends to become a bundle of grievances and complaints. And when we have Shraddha, we can see just the opposite happen. The person is always positive. He has got no complaints about life, even in the face of most difficult and challenging situations. He sees meaning in and through all the evils. So that is the main thing. So which I would like to just focus on one more thing here.
Maharaj, before you go to the next thing, Can you address the, you just said, Shraddha entered into Nachiketa.
Yeah.
So now, how is it possible? Can we cultivate Shraddha? Because you have just stated, Shraddha entered into him. So if we are people that don't have that type of conviction in the truth, that type of conviction in our own inner reality, can we cultivate that? How can we get Shraddha? Does Shraddha have to enter into us?
See, definitely. Now, when we talk about Shraddha entering into Nachiketa, this again, if you just look into our Indian tradition, it has much to do with the kind of education that we have received. Now, let me take it in this way. The kind of education today we are receiving in our schools and colleges, does it have any reference to anything which is non-material? No, we are not introduced to a realm which is transcending this material and physical plane which we are seeing. Now, as a consequence to this, what is happening is our mind is completely trained to look at things only in one way. And we have absolutely no faith in the existence of something beyond this material plane. But in the ancient times, our education system was just the opposite. Right from the childhood, when the baby is born, the whole education is the education about the non-physical dimension. The non-physical dimension of human existence becomes the basis of human education itself. So, when we have that kind of a culture, it is that kind of a culture, that kind of an educational system which existed in India long back, because of which, this kind of a faith in the non-physical dimension of existence was very natural. People had a natural faith in the existence of something which is non-physical and which doesn't get destroyed. So in this context, when it is said that Shraddha entered into Nachiketa, what actually it signifies is that this boy is endowed with this quality. In fact, it is coming in a traditional manner because he already has got that kind of a basis in his education, perhaps, and that is why he is gripped by the spirit of, see, there is something which doesn't get destroyed. There is an infinite reality within each one of us. So this kind of an education which he had gained from perhaps his parents, it became awakened at that particular point of time, and he was completely gripped by that when he was seeing that his father was doing something which was not corresponding to truth. So in a way, we have to understand this in the way that the present education system, where there is absolutely no place for anything non-material, where the whole focus is only on the material and physical aspect of the human personality, the Shraddha is completely destroyed. And we become cynical and skeptical about everything that is non-physical. And this is the doorway to human degeneration, stagnation, and destruction. That is why, there's a beautiful line in Swami Vivekananda. Swami very beautifully says, you see, truth is not going to pay homage to society. It is the society that has to pay homage to truth or die. Now, what is this truth that Swamiji is talking about? This truth which Swamiji is talking about is the truth which is residing within each one of us. The society has to pay homage to this truth or die. Instead of the word society, you can just use some other word also to understand it very properly. You see, this human psychophysical system has to pay homage to truth which is residing inside. It is not the truth which is going to pay homage to the psychophysical system. So this paying homage to this truth means what? this psychophysical system, this psychophysical system has to be fully aligned with the truth which is inside, and that is the meaning of paying homage to this truth. When our life, this human life is completely aligned to the truth which is inside, that is the doorway to raise the human life to higher planes of existence. So it is not the society, it is not the truth that is going to pay homage to society. It is not the truth that is going to pay homage to the psychophysical system. It is the society, it is the psychophysical system. The entire human society has to be aligned to the supreme truth. And that is the way of raising the human civilization and culture itself. And this is the one thing which is absolutely absent in our present-day human civilization, and this is what is actually bothering us. I would say that today, in today's situation, you just see, more than the so-called COVID-19 virus, what is more dangerous is the virus of cynicism and skepticism which has infected the human race. If the human mind has to tackle this difficult situation today, the situation which we are facing today, the death which we are seeing around us, and everyone is gripped by a sense of fear and insecurity, if we have to negotiate this situation, the most important thing that we need to do is we have to first remove the virus of cynicism and skepticism from our minds. When that virus is killed, when the human mind is filled with Shraddha, when the human mind is filled with that affirmative state of mind which affirms the existence of an infinite reality within each one of us, it is that state of mind which can negotiate this sense of insecurity and fear which is gripping every human being on the planet today. So this is the immense role and importance of Shraddha in the present situation. That is why when you asked me, Swamiji, on what topic would you like to talk today, so I chose the subject of Nachiketa mainly because of the Shraddha factor. How Shraddha, just see, presume, is so interesting. Nachiketa, this young boy, he dares to go to the abode of death. From where did he get the strength to go to the abode of death? Shraddha. Shraddhavan, a person who is endowed with Shraddha, for that person, even death becomes a very small thing. Because Shraddha means what? Shraddha means that positive state of mind which affirms the existence of an infinite reality within each one of us, which is beyond death. So, the secret of negotiating this problem of death is in this one great virtue of Shraddha. And that is why this Upanishad was so dear to Swami Vivekananda. And this character is so wonderful. Today, the entire world has to learn lessons from Nachiketa, who dared to go and face death itself because Shraddha entered into him. He was gripped by Shraddha. He was gripped by that positive frame of mind which affirms the existence of an infinite reality within each one of us. Without this Shraddha, as I said, what happens is we human beings turn to become a bundle of grievances and ailments. We constantly keep on complaining about this and that. But when we have Shraddha, every situation becomes a situation, an opportunity for us to straight away stare into reality in and through the challenges that we face. This is completely a different frame of mind. It is this frame of mind which is absolutely lacking in the present-day education system, unfortunately. Human being is not made by the knowledge of physics and science and chemistry and biology. Human being is made by Shraddha. This is what the Upanishads say. Every human being is what his Shraddha is, or the degree of Shraddha that person has. That is what actually goes into the making of a true human being. What is the difference between Vivekananda and we people? In Vivekananda we find blazing Shraddha, whereas we people, in us, the Shraddha is not that blazing. So, and we need to understand one more thing here in this context. You see, when we talk about this great reality, which is present in each one of us, this great truth, as I said before, the main purpose of human life is to experience this truth. But this pursuit of moving towards experience this great reality, from what point onward does it start? This pursuit won't start in a person who doesn't have Shuddha. And human suffering and miseries will never come to an end as long as we don't move towards the experience of this infinite reality. So Shraddha is the starting point. Let me just give you the links, what is the next thing which happens when we have Shraddha. When we have Shraddha, the next thing that happens is the full manifestation of Viveka. Viveka means the capacity of the human mind to differentiate between what is permanent and what is transient. This is a wonderful capability which is there in each one of us, but which remains suspended in most of us. This capacity, inherent, God-gifted capacity to differentiate between what is permanent and what is transient. Vivek. Now this Vivek won't function unless you have Shraddha, unless you have that affirmative state of mind which says that, yes, there exists a reality within me. If a person doesn't have the Shraddha in him, you won't find this Viveka function. It won't happen. Because what will he differentiate after all? The differentiation is between the unchanging and the changing. If he doesn't have that affirmative state of mind which affirms the existence of an unchanging entity, where is the room for Viveka? So for the Viveka to function, the first starting point is Shraddha. And with the blooming of Viveka, when you have this when you begin to make this differentiation between what is permanent, what is transient, the next thing what comes is Vairagya. Vairagya is dispassion. Dispassion or distaste. Distaste for everything that is transient. Distaste for everything that is transient and intense love for that which is permanent. When I use the word love, it becomes a term which is used in bhakti. It's a beautiful thing. We talk about love for God. You see, even the love for God the starting point is Shraddha. When you have Viveka, when you know this is transient and this is permanent, then your mind begins to move towards the permanent. And that movement of the human mind towards the permanent is what we call in bhakti as prema, as love. Love for God, love for the infinite reality. And this is the secret of that ultimate experience which is waiting to come into the lives of each one of us. So that's why Bhagavad Gita had said, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. It means it is only a person who has got Shraddha, he alone attains this great experience of the infinite reality. We can just think about the opposite. Ashraddhavan. The person who doesn't have a Shraddha, what happens? He remains tied down to the small psychophysical system, a system which can give him only doses of pain and suffering and misery. Unending doses of pain, misery and suffering. That is the story of human life in the physical plane. How much ever the person may be a rich man, a very well-known man, socially well-established, whatever it is. But as long as human identity is limited to the physical dimension, the story of the man is fraught with misery, suffering, and insecurity. There is just no escape from this. So the whole of the Upanishads have got only one concern, to tell all of us that we, in our essence, in our true nature, we are not limited to the small psychophysical system. We are infinite. And that experience of infinitude of all of us starts from the time Shraddha grips us. From that moment when we are gripped by this positive state of mind, which affirms the existence of an infinite reality within each one of us. That is the beautiful thing which is depicted in this story. This small boy gets the guts, he gets the strength even to face death, the Lord of death, because he was gripped by Shraddha. He had the guts to question his father. How come? His father, he's just an 8 or 10 years old boy, and he's seeing that his father is doing something wrong, and he garners the strength to question his father. Father, what you're doing is not right. It is deceitful for you to give away gifts which is not worth giving. From where does he get this strength? The strength comes from Shraddha. Then from where does he see, as I said before, when there is Shraddha, there is Viveka. And when there is Viveka, there is Vairagya. The capacity to give away, the capacity to renounce. Just imagine this small boy. Now, if you just look into the psychology of a boy or a teenager would just imagine, and he would be filled with all kinds of desires and fancies of good things of life. Whereas this boy, he's ready to sacrifice all the good things of his life, and he's ready to go to the abode of death only for one thing, to ensure that his father's words are not falsified. What a wonderful thing. From where does he get the strength to renounce all the good things of life and go to the abode of Lord of death? Shraddha. When you have Shraddha, you will have the capacity to turn your face away from the so-called, the transient and pleasurable things of life. And that is why we find when Yamaraj was offering him all the best things of this so-called physical plane, for all those things, for Nachiketa, all those things were just like straw. He said, I'm not interested in these things. You keep these things with you. I'm interested in the mystery of life and death. Tell me something about that. From where does the spirit come? Shraddha. So Swami Vivekananda he used to really love this character of Nachiketa so much. And again, this factor of Shraddha, he would say, that society is the greatest. Swamiji had said, that society is the greatest where the highest truths become practical. Again, I repeat that sentence which I had referred to before. It is not that society is going to pay homage to, it is not that truth is going to pay homage to society, it is the society that has to pay homage to truth. And that society is the greatest where the highest truths become practical. And that human life is the greatest, where this highest truth which is residing in each one of us becomes actively manifested. That human life is the greatest, where this infinite reality which is residing in each one of us becomes actively manifested. This is what Swami Vivekananda says, that each soul is potentially divine, and the goal of human life is to manifest this divinity in every moment of human life. And this comes from Shraddha. At the root of everything lies this one beautiful quality of Shraddha. And that is the importance of this wonderful story. Yes, Prashant, you have any questions?
All right. So let me do a little follow-up here then.
Yeah.
So you've just stated that it all begins with Shraddha. And then Shraddha leads to Viveka. And then that leads to Vairagya. And that
Prashant, you need to repeat once more, please.
You just stated, I'm just summarizing. It begins with Shraddha. And that leads to Viveka. That leads to Vairagya. And that is taking you a movement towards the permanent. Now, I would like you to explain in the Katha Upanishad when it says the Atman cannot be attained by the study of Vedas or by intelligence or by hearing sacred books. It is attained by him alone whom it chooses. To such a one, Atman reveals itself. What is the meaning of that statement in context with what you just said? Because you just said, up to now, Shraddha enters, and through your own self-effort, all these things start to unfold. And now it's saying Atman reveals itself to whom it chooses. Please explain this contradiction.
Yes.
Apparently contradiction.
Yes, Prashant, it's a wonderful question. There is no contradiction here. You see that verse which you are referring to, there you will find the real inner dynamics of this ultimate human experience. A dynamics which takes place at the most profound depths of the human personality. So what is that Upanishad saying there? It's saying that, you see, Nayam Atma Pravachanena Lapyaha, Na Medhaya, Na Bahuna Shutena. This Atman is not to be attained by Pravachana. Pravachana means discourses or scholarship, whatever you may say. It is not to be attained by the human intellect, and it is not to be attained by the study of books. Yameveshe brunute tena labhya. This Atman is attained by that person who wholeheartedly chooses the Atman. To such a person, that Atman reveals itself. So two things are going to happen here simultaneously. Actually, truly speaking, it is not that two things are happening. Apparently two things are happening. But if you just look at it from the human angle, let us understand it from the human angle, there what is happening is, as I said, it is the man's pursuit of choosing this infinite reality which is throbbing within each one of us. The question is, presently as human beings exist, what is their choice? Do they choose Atman or do they choose the things of the world? Now, a person who is busy choosing the things of the world, do you think the Atman is going to be revealed to that person? It's never going to happen. So Atman gets revealed to that person who wholeheartedly, I again repeat, wholeheartedly, this is very important. Atman is revealed to that person who wholeheartedly chooses the Atman. Now this choosing of the Atman starts with Shraddha. Shraddha is that first starting point where the human being or the human mind affirms the existence of the Atman. If you don't even affirm that, what is the question of that ultimate reality getting revealed in our life? So, this is how it happens there. I need to just, in this context, I will just focus upon one more beautiful verse which is found in this Katha Upanishad, which needs a little bit of probing and which is very strategically important in our day-to-day life. Katha Upanishad says, Paranchi khani vyatranat swayambhu tasmat param pashyati antaratma. It says that, you see, all our sense organs, they are so designed and so programmed that it constantly looks outside. Look at our eyes, look at our ears, our nose, nostrils, and all the sensory system which we are endowed with. They are all programmed. It's a very strong programming, and it doesn't work against the program. All the sensory system is constantly looking outward, and therefore the human soul is constantly busy with external things. It's a programming. But the Upanishad says, Kaschid dhiraha. There are few, a very selected few, Kaschid dhiraha pratyagatmanamaiksha. There are only few people who choose the pratyagatma, who choose the Atman. Kaschid dhiraha pratyagatmanamaikshat avritta chakshura avritattvachan. Only a few people who choose the Atman with the desire to attain immortality. There are only few people who do that. Otherwise, the rest of the humanity is busy with the transient things of the world. So the Upanishad makes a clear demarcation of life engaged, human being engaged in two different directions. One is the direction of the sensory world. Any common woman or a common man on the street, you will find busy with the things of the world, which is transient. And there are few who can be counted on the fingers in whom we find this Shraddha functioning. Shraddha functioning means that person has started affirming the existence of a non-physical entity which is residing inside each one of us. And this non-physical entity, the spiritual entity, which is the source of infinite power and glory, residing in each one of us. Now this positive frame of mind which affirms the existence of this reality, that positive frame of mind is the starting point for that person to move in the direction of experiencing this infinite reality. So this is a very beautiful, that's why in this context, Swami Vivekananda's that famous utterance, we all know that. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. That verse is found in Katha Upanishad. See, you can see how Swami Vivekananda was so fascinated. Many of the beautiful utterances which we find coming out from the mouth of this great spiritual teacher, Vivekananda, is from Katha Upanishad. Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. Uttisthata, Jagrata, Prapya Varani Bodhata. It's a beautiful thing. Uttisthata. Now see, the Upanishad, Yamaraj is the Guru here. The Lord of the Death is the spiritual teacher. So Yamaraj is saying, Uttisthata. Come on, arise now. Jagrata. Jagrata means what? Awake. Awake from what? Awake from the sleep of ignorance. Shankaracharya says that, what is this awakening? It is the awakening from the deep slumber of ignorance. Avidya, Ajnana, Nidra. It is a sleep, it is awakening from Ajnana Nidra. Ajnana Nidra means the deep slumber of ignorance. So awake from this deep slumber of ignorance. And how are you going to do that? By approaching great teachers, spiritual teachers. Approach a great teacher, a guru, sit at his feet and learn the lessons of this great Atman, Atma Vidya, and attain and experience that Atman. This is the process. So that wonderful verse Swami Vivekananda has freely translated as arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. So I feel that in the present day situation where we are facing this very tragic kind of a situation which we are seeing around us, where we have to see so many people dying. This should raise this one big question in the minds of the people, that what is the ultimate mystery of life and death, and try to resolve it. Half of the humanity is in lockdown. Instead of worrying about all kinds of things, human mind should busy itself in resolving the mystery of life and death itself. That can be the best way in which we can utilize the times in which we are living today, where people are trying to find out ways to spend their times more creatively.
Maharaj, thank you. We have about 40 questions already that are coming up. And so I'd like to take this time to ask you some of the questions coming from the audience. And also, if you have a question you'd ask to live, raise your hand and Vikram, who is will be watching you, he'll take note. Maharaj, the first question that comes up is this: without the experience of reality, how is Shraddha possible? Is it not just a nice theory that it is just a tool to satisfy yourself in some way? In other words, she's asking Maharaj, without the experience of something, of reality, of some glimpse of the divine, how is Shraddha possible?
See, this is a very interesting question actually. This question often comes. Sri Ramakrishna very beautifully says, he gives an illustration in this respect. See, when the sun shines in the sky, do we see the stars? Sri Ramakrishna says, when the sun is brilliantly shining in the sky, do we see the stars? And only because we are not seeing the stars, does it mean that the stars don't exist? And in that situation, if somebody tells us, my dear child, just because you're not seeing the stars, don't think the stars are not there. Stars are there. So we need to pose trust and faith in the words of people who know. Though we haven't experienced the existence of stars, there are persons who have seen the stars when the sun disappears from the sky. So those experienced people, their statements are to be taken as propositions which we need to inquire into. So this is the method. We have to pose faith in the words of the teachers who have experienced this reality. So this question is very valid. How can we have faith in that which we haven't experienced? Actually, it's a contradiction. If you have already experienced, there is no need for you to have faith in that. So, what is the definition, technical definition of this term Shraddha? If you just see, Shankaracharya says in the Vivekachudamani, Shastrasya Guru Vakyasya Satya Buddhi Avadharanam. It's a beautiful statement. Shastrasya Guru Vakyasya, it means the words of the scriptures and the words coming from the mouth of a person who knows the supreme truth. He is Guru. Regarding these words, to have a positive frame of the mind. What is that positive frame of mind? In that positive frame of mind, that person says, yes, what the scriptures are saying is true. Though I haven't experienced it now, I haven't seen it, but these people have seen it, and I trust them. This basic trust is a requirement. This is what I said. When you become cynical or skeptical, then that is the beginning of human degeneration, or rather stagnation at a certain plane of existence. Human evolution can take place only when we have this basic trust and faith in the words of those who have already experienced this truth. If this much we don't have, our spiritual journey doesn't even take off. So just because we don't see stars in the sky during daytime, it doesn't mean that the stars are not existing there. Stars are there. There are some people who have experienced it. Similarly, just because we have not seen the Atman, it doesn't mean that it is not there. There are people who have experienced it. And we have to pose trust and faith in the words of these great masters, and that will ensure that we also one day have that experience in life.
Thank you, Maharaj. Vikram, would you like to put was there someone that had a question, Vikram? Okay. Maharaj, I think another question we have here is, what is the human system? Why is the human system not aligned by design? What's the reason behind this? Somehow, are we all getting it wrong? So, Maharaj, why is the human system by default not aligned? Why are the senses going out? Why is this happening like this? Why are we not aligned to go in? This is the question that's being asked to you.
See, this question can't be raised, actually speaking. This is the most intriguing part of this investigation, and this question often comes. Why is that? How is this infinite reality became finite? This is just like asking the question, how did that infinite, which is never bound, how did that become bound? Similarly, this question is, why is that our system is always going outside and not inside? All these questions come from a plane where we are ignorant about that ultimate truth. When knowledge dawns, it is just like, let me just give you an example, which Vedanta always gives. Now, if you can remember yesterday night's dream experience which you had, definitely we all have our dreams. When we go to sleep, we have our dreams. So in dream, you have all kinds of experiences. And in dream, you ask this question as to why did a certain kind of experience take place to you? And when the dream breaks and you awake from the dream, now what will be the importance that you will give to that question which you were raising in the dream about the dream experience? Will it be valid? So this is a strange paradox of existence where we are experiencing, or rather we are finding ourselves inside a realm where these questions do come up. But the answer to these questions cannot be found inside this realm. The answer to these questions can be found only when we transcend this realm, and then we see that such a question is not possible. So why this human system is constantly looking outward, or why is it programmed that way, or rather, why is that infinite reality existing in the form of a human being? It is as good as asking this question. How is that infinite reality existing in a human form? It is just as good as asking this question as, how is that infinite expressing itself in the form of a human being? But is it really a fact? Vedanta says, your understanding about yourself as a human being is itself the first basic thing to be questioned. When you begin to question whether this itself is the ultimate reality, as a human being, my identity as a human being, is this the final thing? When we ask this question, and when we arrive at the right kind of an answer through experience, at that time you will see that all these questions of why is this sense organs programmed in this way, this why question doesn't actually arise in Vedanta. It's a fact. This is what Swami Vivekananda very beautifully says. This kind of an experience which we have, in which we are constantly running out, this is just a statement of fact of what we are and what we are seeing around us. This is what is Maya. To put it in one word, Vedanta says this is Maya. And this Maya, beautifully, Swami Vivekananda says, it's a statement of fact of what we are and what we are seeing around us. That's all. There's no question of why. It's there. But when we investigate into it, and when we come to the final conclusion through an experience, we will see that the whole thing is different. It was just like a dream. All these questions were being asked in a state of dream. When the dream broke, everything is changed.
Thank you. Yes, Vikram, go ahead. If somebody has a question, go ahead. All right, we're going to open a question to someone in the audience. You please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, and then tell us and ask the question, please.
My name is Rajendra from Austin, Texas. Since you mentioned that the ultimate reality according to scripture and guru is what you ought to believe in Shraddha. But what if Shankaracharya says ultimate reality is fullness and Buddha says ultimate reality is void? Whom do you believe?
Yeah, see, Buddha has been very grossly misunderstood. This is one thing which we need to understand, which Swami Vivekananda also constantly mentions, that what Buddha preached was nothing else but Vedanta. But his way of putting things was negative. That is the beauty of Adi Shankaracharya, where everything is positive, where what is taught is everything is Brahman. That is the ultimate thing. So what Buddha talks about as void, actually he was referring to a state in which the so-called, this world which we are seeing, the world of our experience, the world of names and forms, as we understand it, such a world, the non-existence of such a world. But what exists in reality, he didn't mention about that. He didn't talk about that. He was silent about it. And that is what actually caused a lot of confusions among his followers, and they began to misinterpret Buddha's teachings. So what Buddha is referring to as void is the same as what the Vedanta talks about as Purna, complete, Brahman, even Adi Shankaracharya. So Buddha was also referring to the same reality which the Upanishad has talked about and which Adi Shankaracharya spoke about, which Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna also spoke about. There is no deviation. Only it has been misunderstood, and that is why this confusion is there.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, question will be asked. Questions asked here. In the Katha Upanishad, it also talks about the self being the size of a thumb. Can you explain that meaning of that? The Atman being the size of a thumb. Can you explain?
Yes. Katha Upanishad says, Angushta Matra Purusho Antaratma. Beautiful verse it is. It's a beautiful verse. This Atman of the size of the thumb. What actually it means is that this reference is there even in the Vedas also. There is nothing, it is there, and this is mentioned in the Vedas as well. What it means to say is that it is the most subtlest dimension of the human personality. That is what actually it indicates. And Shankaracharya, as well as Katha Upanishad itself, very beautifully tells us, see, if you have to find out the subtlest in the midst of all kinds of gross coverings, just imagine. I want you to just exercise your imagination to understand this Angushtamatra Purusha. This Purusha, this infinite reality which is of the dimension of a thumb. Thumb is not, you should not be taking it literally as a thumb. What it refers to is extremely subtle. If you have to identify and recognize something which is extremely subtle in the midst of all kinds of gross coverings, that is precisely the challenge in front of the human being. So, Katha Upanishad, as well as Adi Shankaracharya, very beautifully says, he says, Munjad Ishika Miva Drishya Varga Pratyanchamatmanam Asangamakriyam, Vivekachudamani, and as well as in this idea is there in Katha Upanishad as well. It's a beautiful thing. Munjat Ishikam Iva Drishya Vargat Pratyanchamatmanam Asangamakriyam. Vivekcha, these are the words. Now I'll just explain what does it mean. It says that, in India you will find a grass which is called as munja. It's the name of a grass, a very fragile grass which is used in our puja also. In our many of the pujas it is used. It's a very fragile kind of a grass. And in the middle of this grass, if you take one particular leaf of this grass, in the center of that grass you will find a very, very thin thread. You can notice it. If you take a leaf, if you just look into the anatomy of a leaf, you will find a central vein running through the center of the leaf. The same thing you can imagine about a grass, in which in the center of the grass there is a very thin thread. The Upanishad talks about this, identifying this Atman, which is of the dimension of a thumb. That is very illustrative. What it means is very subtle. How can you separate this extremely subtle Atman from the gross coverings within which it is finding itself? The process is just like removing that very thin thread which is in the middle of the grass from the grass without damaging the ether. So the words used there is dhairyena. Dhairyena means with utmost dexterity and persistence, and with utmost care and caution, with the highest degree of caution and alertness, you need to separate that thin thread from that grass. So this process of separating this Atman from the gross covering is just akin to that. That is a beautiful comparison. So where you talked about this issue of this Atman being presented as an Angushta Matra Purusha, Atman which is of the size of a thumbnail, what it actually refers to is extreme subtlety. Atman is the subtlest part of this human system, covered by all kinds of gross coverings, and the process of separating this Atman from the gross that's why Upanishad says this can be done only by a person who has got extremely sharp and pure mind. Unless the mind becomes extremely sharp here refers to purity actually, nothing else. When we talk about sharpness of something, we usually understand it in a very gross and physical sense. But what actually means extreme purity. When the mind becomes extremely pure, it is in that pure state of mind, it becomes possible to identify and separate the subtle Atman from all the gross coverings and layers. That is the meaning of that verse.
Raj, if one experiences that, is that different from experiencing Atman as the infinite totality? Is there a difference from an experiential standpoint of experiencing the divinity within oneself, as you sing, as opposed to experiencing the totality of that divinity? Is there a difference from an experiential standpoint? Is my question.
See, here we need to understand one thing. The process of experiencing the Atman by separating it from Anatman. I'm using two words here. It is the process of separating the Atman. Atman means the self, from Anatman. Anatman means the non-self. So initially there are two different, it may appear as if there are two different things. This is the climax of the spiritual journey. The spiritual journey which starts with the process of separating the unchanging from the changing. The spiritual journey which starts from a very focused pursuit of separating the self from the non-self, as if they are two different things. Finally, when you reach the climax of this process where you experience the self, where you experience the Atman, in that experience, one will see to it that this what he had separated as non-self, what he had separated as Anatman is nothing but Atman manifesting in a certain form. That's all. So the person's final experience will be that everything is Atman, everything is self. There is nothing apart from Atman, there is nothing apart from Brahman, there is nothing apart from one's own self. What appeared to be separated from me what appears to be distinct from me as different entities, they are all nothing but my own self. They are nothing but my own Atman. They are all nothing but Brahman. Sarvam Khaluvidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman. So this is the climax, the totality which you are talking about. So the process starts with separation of these two things as Atman and Anatman. But the climax comes where you see that what you have separated, everything is that one reality. So this is the totality of that spiritual experience. Sri Ramakrishna beautifully puts it. He says that if you have to reach the top of the ceiling, you have to climb the stairs. And with every step that you keep on the stair, you are leaving behind the lower rungs of the steps. So one by one, as you climb the stair, you leave behind the lower rungs of stairs. So this process of climbing up and leaving certain things behind is going on. This is what Vedanta is talking about. Neti, 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 not this, not this. This is all changing, this is all changing. Changing can't be the reality. And you go on, and finally when you reach the top, the ceiling, there what happens? The climax. There the person sees that all those rungs of stairs which he had left behind, all these rungs of stairs are made of the same stuff, the stuff by which the ceiling is made. It is the same stuff which is expressing itself in the form of the different rungs of the stairs. This is what Sri Ramakrishna beautifully puts. So all these things which we negated initially as unchanging and transient and ephemeral, in the climax of that experience, it would be experienced that everything is nothing but Brahman. It is Brahman which is appearing in this form of different names and forms, and we are mistakenly thinking that this is world. Upanishad has to say that there is nothing called world. It is all Brahman, nothing else but Brahman.
Thank you, Marge. Vikram, yes, go ahead. Question from the audience.
Next question is from Rishi, please.
Pranam Swamiji.
Pranam.
I feel like many devotees would agree that we have all at least some bit of Shraddha with which we do some amount of Viveka and some amount of Vairagya. But then, at least for me, I forget it all. And then I get caught up with things and then I have to remind myself and then come back to it. I had to strengthen this conviction, strengthen this Shraddha so that we can do more Viveka and more Vairagya.
Shankaracharya very beautifully says, Satsangatve Nissangatvam, Nissangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatve Nishchalatatvam, Nishchalatatve Jivanmukti. So what you have asked about how to strengthen this Shraddha, the starting point is Satsang. There can be nothing greater than the company of people who are seriously walking on the path of spiritual realization. The company of such people. So satsangena nissangatvam. When you are doing satsang, when you are in the company of people whose mind and whose whole psychophysical system is constantly striving to align itself with the Supreme Reality. When you are constantly in the company of such people, you also are going to be infected by this good disease. Today we have COVID-19 infection, which is fatal. This spiritual infection can make us immortal. And this spiritual infection can come from satsang. So, the best way to increase one's Shraddha and Viveka and Vairagya is to have constant satsang. Satsangatve nissangatvam. When you have satsanga, you will develop nissangatvam. Nissangatvam means dispassion for the things of the world. And when there is nissangatvam, what follows is nirmohatvam. Wonderful thing. Your mind, which is presently gripped with all kinds of infatuations for so many things of the world, your mind will become free from these infatuations. And when the mind is fully freed from these infatuations, the end result is Nishchala Tattva. One will directly experience this infinite reality which is inside us. And when we experience this infinite reality, Nishchala Tattve Jivan Mukti, you experience liberation even when we are alive in this body.
Thank you, Marge. Vikram, are there any other questions?
Yes, we've got one from the Vedanta Society of New York from Sangeeta and Niyant. They'd like to ask you, Maharaj, pranam, firstly pranam to you, and then the question is, in today's world, we often see people with impure lifestyle or mind still managing to display very sharp intellect. How do you reconcile this with what you just said about purity of mind needed for best understanding? Thank you.
Yes. See, usually there are two kinds of intellects. It's a very good question, actually, very practical. In the world, we will find that there are people who have got a very sharp intellect. They can do wonderful things in this physical plane. This quality of intellect being sharp at the physical plane is nothing but the training of the human mind and intellect in understanding things of the world through cause and effect relationship. This is a wonderful capacity, Everything, we need to understand the connection between one thing and the other. If you just see the whole of our education system, whether it is maths or science or chemistry or biology or anything, the bedrock of all this empirical sciences and pursuits is the human mind's capacity to connect one thing with the other. And if you understand the connections, you can explain many things. This kind of an intellectual capacity is of one kind. But a man or a woman may have this capacity to the highest degree, and yet he or she will be absolutely incapable to understand spiritual things without the purity of the mind. Even with all the impurities, a person may be very good at connecting things in this way. But when we talk about spiritual reality, that which is non-physical, which transcends the physical dimension, to understand that this kind of an intellectual capability to connect things is not sufficient. What is needed here is the mind has to be free from all dual thrones. When I say dual thrones, what does it mean? You see, presently, the human mind is governed by, as it is functioning today, if you just look into the human mind's behavior, you will find that it is essentially governed by the forces of raga and dvesha. These are all instinctual, and this is what actually constitutes the impurity of the mind. You may be a very intellectual person, very efficient in connecting things. Raga means an inexplicable kind of an attraction towards something. It is inexplicable, actually. It's a force, and we are just victims of that force. That force functions, and we are just driven by that. And dvesha is just the opposite of that. It is a force which makes us hate somebody. It is a force which makes us look at certain things negatively. These are the forces working and pulling the human mind in two opposing directions. Now, all the human behavior, the story of human life, the story of human history, or whatever you may say, it's all the story of raga and dvesha expressing in so many forms. Now, as long as human mind is gripped by this disease of attraction and repulsion, uncontrollably taking place, and we being victims of that, in this situation, no matter, you may be having a great intellect which can connect two things by causality, but that person will be absolutely incapable of understanding what this infinite reality is inside. It is impossible. So the first requirement when it comes to understanding the spiritual reality is concerned is freeing this mind from the disease of this kind of an impurity expressing itself in the form of raga and dvesha. Raga dvesha vyuktaistu vishayan indriyeshwarayam charan atmavashyir vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Bhagavad Gita says, a mind which is freed from raga and dvesha, even when it is roaming in this jungle of sense objects. That is the beautiful description. Even when the mind is roaming in the jungle of sense objects, it is free of raga and dvesha. It is freed from the dual throngs of attraction and repulsion. This is the pure state of mind. It is a state of mind which is balanced, which doesn't go to the extremes. It remains in the center. It is neutral. Purity of the mind means the neutrality of the mind. It is neutral. It is neither attracted or nor does it repel. It remains neutral. Now, this is the state of mind which can sense the existence of reality which transcends this physical dimension. So this is the connection between the human intellect, which is very sharp in understanding the empirical things, at the same time, which will be absolutely incapable to understand what the supreme reality is as long as it is gripped and governed by the forces of raga and dvesha.
Maharaj, thank you very much. I think one more question. We cannot leave the Katha Upanishads without talking about the concepts of Shreyas and Preyas. So one question that was asked, if one gets Shraddha, does Shreyas increase? Can you explain what is Shreyas and what is Preyas, and how can we use it to help in our spiritual life? How can we distinguish between Shreyas and Preyas?
We have indirectly touched upon this point, but anyway, this question is a very good question. See, prayers means that which is pleasurable. Now, all the transient things of this world, they are all very pleasurable. They give pleasure to the sensory system. They are all prayers. Shreyas means just the opposite of that. It is not pleasurable, but it is truly beneficial. This distinction between what is truly beneficial and what appears to be pleasurable is the distinction which only human beings can understand. Animals, they are governed by only that which is pleasurable. They have no idea of what is beneficial. We human beings are also, for the as far as the general run of the human beings are concerned, we are also governed by this animalistic tendency of being governed only by that which is pleasurable. But we have the capacity to choose that which is beneficial. So beneficial is that which is referred to by the term Shreyas, and pleasurable is that which is referred to by the term praise. And these are two different things, taking the human life in two different directions. So, now what we talked about Viveka and everything, it's just, it comes to this very point of differentiating between what is pleasurable and what is beneficial, and choose the beneficial and leave the pleasurable. Because pleasurable is pleasurable only for a moment, it ends up only in suffering. This is what Bhagavad Gita very beautifully talks about, that it says, see, usually that which appears to be very pleasurable, very pleasing in the beginning, in any human experience that we just see, any sensory indulgence, when we indulge in any sensory pleasure, it is very pleasing in the beginning, but it ends up in misery. All pleasures which we indulge in, you can see, we have indulged in all kinds of pleasures throughout how many lives, but still we are dissatisfied. Still we are miserable. So all this indulgence in physical pleasure, it only ends up in incompleteness. It only ends up in misery. Whereas that which is beneficial. It appears to be very painful in the beginning. I repeat, that which is beneficial, it appears to be very painful in the beginning. Not appears to be, it is painful in the beginning. But the ultimate result of that pursuit for the beneficial is like nectar, amrita. Bhagavad Gita says. For example, let me just give you an example. We all know if we have a sensory indulgence, you enjoy pleasure. And the end of that is misery. Now, the opposite of that, you try to sit down and meditate. Meditation is a very painful process. To sit down and meditate for 5 minutes, you see, it's an extremely painful process. You are in a war zone. But it is a beneficial thing. It is not pleasurable in the beginning. It is painful in the beginning. But if you persist, if you persevere, if you keep going on, if you remain in this war zone, which is painful in the beginning, in the end, it will result in nectarial experience. Experience of nectar of the Atma. So Shreyas is beneficial and Preyas is pleasurable. So distinction should be clearly made, and that is what is actually the work of Vivek.
Thank you, Maharaj. We'll leave it at this much. Now that, as you know, in America and India and most places in the world, we are sort of locked down. We have to stay in our places and we cannot. Can you suggest that during this time, what should we do? What should we do in this time of distress? In fact, let me ask you a question. Katha Upanishad, I heard Katha, the meaning of Katha, one meaning was it means distress. So spiritual information is given to us when we're in distress. So in this distress time, Maharaj, what is your advice to us? What should we be doing now that we are confined in our houses, in our homes, in our monasteries? What is your recommendation that we should follow now during these days that we're here?
See, what can be a more creative than engaging oneself in inquiring into this supreme reality. I look at this whole situation as a God-given opportunity for the entire human race to ask some moot questions. See, Prasoon, I'll tell you one thing. I have been receiving so many phone calls from my own devotees. I'm telling you very frankly. And in that phone calls, I could make out one thing, that the challenge of remaining indoors, it's a serious problem. Today, when we are forced to remain indoors, really many of the people, they are finding it to be a very tough job to remain indoors, because we have never trained ourselves to be restrained. We are constantly on the run. This entire humanity, which is constantly on the run, I see in a way perhaps it's God's way or God's mechanism to make us stop for a while and force us to think about what are we running for? What are we after all running for? Day in and day out, we are just like a machine. We are being made to run. It's not that we are running, we are being made to run. We need to stop this. So I find in many of the phone calls coming from the devotees this great challenge of remaining indoors, because they feel claustrophobic. They feel very difficult to be within the four walls. Now just imagine how more difficult it is to go within and to remain contained within the confines of the human mind when it comes to spiritual practices. We talk about meditation, we talk about all these things. Meditation is a very big word. We need to understand where we are unable to even remain within the confines of our own rooms, how much more difficult it is to remain inside our psychophysical system, leaving the external things outside. So this is a complete challenge of turning the human energies, which is today functioning in one direction, to a direction which is inward. This is a tremendous challenge. I would say that this is a proper time for all of us to once again raise some basic questions about what is the main purpose of human life, and try to find answers to this, just like Nachiketa raising these questions. Because unless we get answers to these questions, the human life is going to remain miserable and it is going to remain fraught with sufferings. One thing which comes to my mind in this situation is a very relevant thing. You see, in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, we know Yudhishthira was one of the 5 Pandavas, the eldest brother. Yudhishthira was asked a beautiful question by Yaksha, by a demigod. Yudhishthira was asked this question. Yudhishthira was asked that, what is the most surprising thing in this creation? The question was, what is the most surprising thing in this creation? And Yudhishthira gave a beautiful answer. He says, you see, what is the most surprising thing in this creation? The most surprising thing in this creation is that every woman, every man sees death all around himself or herself, and at the same time, never for a moment thinks that he himself or she herself is going to die someday. This is the most mysterious thing. We see death dancing around us. We are surrounded by the dance of death today. If you just see the present situation, the world is facing a grave tragedy or a tragic situation in which we are seeing the dance of death around us. But even in this, for a moment, we don't think that we all are going to face the same moment of death at some point of time or the other. It never occurs to us. We are still busy with physical things and worldly things. So the best way to utilize this time would be to ask some good questions and utilize our time creatively. Find out answers not intellectually, but by changing the very outlook, changing the very direction of the human mind, giving it a new direction, changing the very contents of the mind. It is not merely an intellectual pursuit. You need to completely, radically change your way you look at things. And that can be done in these moments when we are forced to remain indoors. And that will be the best way to creatively, spiritually, creatively use the time which has been given to us by Almighty God.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you for this wonderful satsang. It's been a wonderful experience. And I recommend, if you haven't seen Maharaj's talk on Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna, please do so. It's on the Bellarmont website. You'll find it in YouTube. One last announcement is we'll be beginning our Vedanta online course next Wednesday at 6 p.m. So there's a 7-week online course, Introduction to Vedanta, with various speakers. If you want to sign up for that, you can go to sandiegovedanta.org. sandiegovedanta.org. The deadline is this Friday. Raj, can you please, thank you so much for the Maharaj. We'll have to have you back again.
Yes,
and can you please close off with the chant, Maharaj?
yes. We can just say Shanti Shanti and we can close this class. And firstly, let us just for a moment pray for the well-being of everybody in this difficult situation. Let us just pray for 1 minute and send out prayers for the health and well-being, the spiritual well-being of everybody on this planet. Let's do that. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you, Prasun.
Thank you, Marge, and thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
all of you. Thank you, all of you.
We had 150 people at our point, Marge, that all had your satsang. Thank you so much, Marge. And thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, all of you. Thank you so much, all of you.